Insurance agents from around the world, welcome to the Insurance Guys podcast. My name is Scott Howell, your fearless host and leader, insurance agency owner and insurance evangelist for I Protect Insurance and Financial Services, based out of Huntsville, Alabama. And before we get started on today's episode, please help me welcome. He is a 6'3" sophomore from Mobile, Alabama, parade first team All-American, Rivals 5-star recruit. He is a fantastic insurance agent and a great American. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the incomparable Mr. Bradley Flowers. How are you, Bradley?
Man, all that Asian fusion food we ate last night is fighting each other. All the different flavors are fighting each other this morning.
Little gurgling. Bradley?
It was I didn't sleep great.
Bradley, I was on my way to your office this morning. And one of the fears I have in life, okay, is I've always said this. I'm not afraid of much. But one of the fears I've always had is being on a 2-lane county road late at night and running up on a bad car wreck with bodies strode everywhere.
And you have to be the one to do something about it.
And I'm it. I'm it. I'm the only, I'm the goalie. And that's why I keep a level 4 trauma kit in the back of my car. And I've got the blood clotting, I've got all that stuff, Because that is truly one of my fears. This morning, I pull out of the Hilton Garden Inn, I turn left, go to Governor's, I turn right. Now, from the Hilton Garden Inn to where I'm sitting in Bradley's office is about 3 minutes. And I get down, and I'm coming up on the red light where that little grocery store market is on the left, which is about a mile back. I believe, does Governor's run east and west? I believe it does, doesn't it? East and west, or is that north and south?
East and west.
I believe it's east and west.
Greer's, that's just right here.
Correct, yeah. And I look up, and so there's 3 lanes of traffic, and again, I'm probably 100 yards from that supermarket. And at that supermarket, there's 3 lanes. I'm in the right lane, and there's a guy in a white Ford F-250 jacked up with a blue healer hanging out the passenger side. Looked like a construction guy. And he's in the lane to my left. Well, the lane next to him is the turning lane where you can turn left at that Greer's Market. And there's a guy in that turning lane, and about the time I'm looking at his truck and I'm looking at this blue healer, but he's not in the turning lane. He's in the go straight lane. And I wish I had a dash cam on my car to see this, because I about saw a bad wreck. That dude decides, even though there's a car in the left lane, when the lights all turn green, including the green light to turn, he's going to turn left. He goes in front of the car that's in the turn lane. Now, remember, he's in the straight lane. He's not in the turn lane.
It's a jacked up truck with a blue healer. He probably doesn't drive downtown much, would be my guess.
White Ford F-250 and a blue healer hanging out the passenger side window. He goes in front of the car that has this blinker on, getting ready to turn left, and he just goes, whee!
Yeah.
And turns left in front of about a 2017 Honda CR-V with a lady in it that was a blonde-headed lady about my age. And y'all, she's doing 50 miles an hour. And she stomps on those brakes as hard as she can stomp on them. And he's turning, and I'm looking at her face, and this face of just, oh my God, I'm going to die. And she stops about 2 feet in front of his truck as he's turning left. And I thought, man, I about saw a bad wreck right there. That's how close it was. Guys, we have got a very special guest on this show today. I have told you guys 3 pillars, 3 stools. It's a 3-legged stool of this podcast. Overarching goal of this podcast is to help you agents any way we can. We do that by interviewing successful agency owners. We introduce technologies to you guys. And as I've said 1,000 times, and I'll say it 1,000 more times, doesn't mean you got to use it, but at least you know about it. Right, Bradley? At least you know about it. The third leg of that stool is I love it when Bradley schedules a guy like our guest today, motivational, been through a lot in life, has some great motivational things to talk to you guys about, because being in the most hated industry in the world besides the Internal Revenue Service, man, it's good to sometimes have a guest on to just help motivate us and kind of get us going. Because I know, I mean, y'all are all just like I am. You're dealing with the same shit I'm dealing with. And sometimes I need a guy like our guest today, and I want to give him the introduction he's always deserved. Ladies and gentlemen, he's originally from Bay Minette, Alabama, and he currently resides in Daphne, Alabama. He is married to the beautiful Melody, and he is a graduate of the University of Alabama. Boo. He's a published author and owner of a construction and real estate investment company. And he's also done insurance benefits from 2017 to 2020, and he's been in real estate for over 10 years. He's a published author of Rising from the Ashes and has spoken on stage with the likes of Tony Robbins and broadcast in over 27 countries. He owns a real estate construction company and real estate investment company. He's also been in the insurance and real estate industry for over 10 years, and he and his wife Melody and son, have been married for over 22 years, and they have a son, Connor, who is a sophomore at the University of Alabama, and a daughter, Caroline, who's a freshman at Daphne High School. This message, Uncle Scott, I'm speaking to Connor, and I'm speaking to Caroline. I need y'all to do me a favor. Your daddy's done a lot in his life, and I need you to do Uncle Scott one favor. I'm never going to ask you for anything again, but when you hear this podcast, and you will hear this podcast, I want you to go up to your daddy. I want you to hug his neck and tell him how much you love him and how proud you are of him. And that will mean more to him than anything you could ever give him. And you need to do that for me, and I would really, really appreciate it if you would. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my profound honor today to introduce to you first-time guest on the IGP, Mr. Billy Brown. How are you, Billy?
Doing good. Honored to be here. I've
Yes,
been
sir.
watching you guys grow, so I was excited to get the invitation. So,
Well, we're excited to have you. So Bradley told me last night, we had an in-person guest coming today, and he said that you have an unbelievable story to tell, a remarkable story. So I wanted you, usually I tell people to climb in my DeLorean, but I want to hear it. I want to hear the story that Bradley's mentioned to me, and just talk to our audience and tell them a little bit about you and how we got here today.
absolutely. You're in the insurance business, so
Sure.
you can fully understand that a life can change in a second. My life changed. We talked about having that fear of a trauma accident or
Sure.
something bad, and I'm that guy. I have a trauma kit in the back of my truck. I was a fire medic for many, many years, but at the age of 2, my life changed. We're riding, unbeknownst to us that there was a truck driver behind us that had been driving for many days, taking White Cross pills.
Oh, gosh.
That's before they had all the rules and regulations. And we were out in a rural area of Grand Bay, Alabama, crossing into Mississippi. Dates my time back a little bit. It's before I-10 was open.
Yeah.
So that shows you it was a few years ago.
Right.
But back then we had the old hoopty station wagon.
Right.
And where did the kids sleep? Get your butt in the back,
Yeah.
lay down, no seat belts. So we're back there asleep. My dad goes to pull into a gas station. 18-wheeler plows into the back of it. The guy's totally asleep, had finally passed out from driving. Multiple days, we go over into a ditch. Car catches on fire. Mom and Dad get out. My aunt and uncle got out. They couldn't get to the kids. There was 3 of us. So my sister jumps up. A man ran up, grabbed her, pulled her through the window. She had a couple little burns, nothing, kind of like a sunburn. My cousin, they were able to get to him.
Right.
He had a little bit of third-degree burns, but I was trapped. The gas tank had ruptured, and the left side of my body had fell inside the gas tank. I remember my mom telling me, my dad ran up to the truck driver, who was awake now, and said, "Can I borrow your extinguisher?"
Right.
He's like, "Oh, it's probably no good. They're dead anyway." So we had to wait till Mobile Fire came about 30 minutes out, and they got there. The car was fully involved in fire, and my mom's freaking out. She's only 18 years old. So here she is watching this big event unfold, and They get there and said, well, he's probably dead. My mom said something that changed my life. She said, dead or alive, I want my kid out of the car.
Right.
Which I think most parents can react and relate to that.
Sure.
So they got me out, flew me on a helicopter. All I remember through this was definitely a God moment of them putting me on the helicopter. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
It's truly, my wife says I ain't sleep through anything. I did. I slept right through the whole incident. Got to the hospital. Well, they immediately, didn't think that I would survive. So they thought, well, let's let him go outside and play with ducks. Ducks in a dirty pond is not where you want to go after you've been burned. So I go out there and I'm playing with ducks. I'm having a great time, but then gangrene sets in. So my mom has to make a decision. They come to her and said, we can either amputate his fingers or we can take a risk and he'd probably die because it was back in the 70s. Back then, they didn't give kids pain medication.
Sure.
But I remember coming out of surgery, and I didn't know going in what was happening. I came out, I said, Mom, they took my fingers. And I remember my mom, just like yesterday, said, it's going to be okay. And I made them unwrap it. I said, I want to see it. So they unwrapped it, and it was just this big ball. And I made them take me back into surgery. I don't know why I knew this, other than God knowing. But I made them go in and cut my hand to where I'd actually be able to function. Because they talked about taking my toes. And I'm like, guys, I got pretty feet. I don't want you messing with my toes. Leave them alone.
Right.
I could probably make money selling feet pictures, I said, leave them alone. So we go there, and they fly me out to Jackson Hospital University because my back was broken. My neck was broken. I had over 72 bones broken in my body.
Gosh.
So I had to learn how to walk again. And, of course, guys, this was back in the day when nobody had insurance.
Right.
We didn't have automobile insurance. You didn't have trucking companies with this big liability policy. Right. So my parents didn't have any money. My dad had just got a job in Texas. Thank goodness somebody showed up in the hospital to talk with my parents, and he was a Shriner. And he said, we'll take care of your son.
I'll be damned.
So they flew me. They put us in the air, flying us to Cincinnati. But at the time, my dad had just got a job outside of Houston. And they called and said, we got a bed open in Galveston, Texas. So they flew us to Galveston, got me out there, and once they kind of evaluated me to see what was going on, I was burnt 65% of my body, 3rd degree,
right?
Which is down into the meat. Really bad on my left side, took my left ear away, my left hand. And I remember I was just talking about this a couple of days ago of the bleach water. They take you in, called debriding. They take you in as hot water with bleach and a steel wool pad.
Scrub on you.
And they'd give you a bite block, wood bite block.
Yeah.
No pain medicine, and they'd scrub you down. And sometimes I can smell like pure bleach and almost have a PTSD moment.
I bet.
My wife has been banned. I told her we were dating, never buy a wooden spoon to put in this house. I can't even eat a popsicle. I can eat around it, but just it's weird, you know. But it takes you back to that
texture thing, probably. Yeah.
But let me tell you, the people at Shriners, you talking about a calling on somebody's life, because they didn't do it for the money. Imagine what they see and they go through. But just the sweetest nurses, and we had these guys that were post-Vietnam veterans, nurses,
right?
And they didn't have the greatest bedside manner because they came from the war.
Sure.
They were there to get a job done, get it done, but they cared. They were true men's men. Right. And this is back in the 70s where most men weren't nurses.
Right.
But these guys, when they came in there, they were in there to get a job done, but you knew they cared about you and they respected you. And, so you grew up going every Christmas break, summer break, spring break. People say, what'd you do spring break? Oh, I had to go get surgery because as you grow, your body tenses up. And, I learned at an early age of what difficulty can be.
Yeah.
Probably kicked in kindergarten, showing up to school. You learn that people can be cruel. People can call you names where it doesn't matter, whether it be race, whether you're male, female, or identity issue. There's people that always has an opinion of you.
Right.
And I remember my mom pushed me through a grocery store in Bay Minette, and a lady coming up and asked her, would you take him out of the store? We really don't like the way he looks. And, of course, my mom was a very strong woman, and she said, well, I really don't care the way you look. Why don't you leave? So my mom always saw that strong woman. So when I started school, when somebody would bully me, I thought the answer was just punch them in the mouth.
Sure.
Well, I went to school back in Bradley probably doesn't remember this, but I'm sure you can relate. We got paddlings in school.
Oh, are you kidding me?
And then who did they call after that?
Oh, your parents.
And then you got it worse. And I would tell them, give me another paddling. Don't call my mama. Because she came through the door swinging, and the principal would laugh about it. So after about third grade, I realized I had to get out of that behavior. My mom told me something that changed the course of my life. She said, people will treat you how you treat yourself.
Right.
And I was like, oh. So I went in that day and wrote on my mirror, third grade, I am loved. I am beautiful. And that changed the way I presented myself.
Sure.
And I realized when I walk in a room and I show up loving me, I don't care what you think.
Absolutely.
Because I know I'm the best looking thing in there.
Yep.
And not to be, but that's just how I operate. People will actually ask me, what happened to you? And I have to think about it.
Yep.
Because I don't get up that way thinking about it. And that's, my kids have seen that through the years. And, you know, so from that devolved into, you know, getting into life, becoming a fire medic. I don't know why. I guess I had this mindset because I had a lot of family that were firemen.
Right.
And I'm thinking, hey, I'm 65%. What's the worst that could happen? Be a crispy critter at the end, you know?
Right.
So I'd run in, and I had a heart to want to help other people.
Right.
So I did that for a while, just realized I couldn't make any money doing it.
Sure.
And that's when I got into, you know, doing real estate and kind of going from there and looking for true love. And that's always a journey that we go through in life. And meeting my wife now of 22 years, I told her on the first date that I was going to marry her. She thought I was crazy. And you never know, whether it be in insurance and real estate or even in life, the people you have an influence on. And I remember, so I decided I wanted to play football like every 12, 13-year-old boy.
Yeah.
I had a redheaded sister that tried to kill me every day, so I figured I was ready for it.
Sure.
But, you know, I remember them telling my mom I couldn't play because I was considered disabled. And my mom said, no, he's going to play or nobody's going to play. So I go out there and I play, and I knew I had the good looks, but I wasn't going to be a quarterback. But I knew I'd love to hit and I loved to kick. So I became a linebacker and became a field goal kicker.
There you go.
In my senior year, we end up undefeated. The last time Bay Minette's ever been undefeated in football.
Be the last time they were
last
undefeated.
time ever. We finally got over. Our toughest game that year was actually against Escambia High School in Atmore. That was always a big rival back then.
How old are you?
52.
Okay, my dad would.
I just turned 53.
Yeah, so that was back in the day. But, you know, I remember we had a lot of great athletes on that team. Now, most of them didn't go anywhere because back then you just
played against Ron Middleton.
Ron Middleton was there, yep. And that was probably some of the hardest hitting, some of the biggest D linemen I'd ever saw in my life. Because, you know, back then, the offensive lineman was 220 pounds.
Yeah, they had like, Escambia High School had like 3 or 4 people over a 10-year span that made it to the NFL, if not more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ron Mitchell, Ron Middleton. You had who's the older guy that played for the Dolphins, won Super Bowl? He's got MS now. Don McNeil. Don McNeil.
I didn't realize he was from
there
Atmore.
3 or 4 others in there. My dad played with Don McNeil, so you missed him probably by about 5 years.
Probably a good thing, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were a powerhouse, and you know, so playing that, and you don't realize till years later, we had a kid went on, played college ball, played in the NFL, played in Europe, and he gets inducted to the Hall of Fame. I didn't realize this kid knew I was on the team. He was the guy. Everybody knows that kid you go to high school with, best athlete on campus.
Sure.
And when he got inducted to the Hall of Fame, he invited me to come to the award ceremony.
I'll be
I'm
damned.
like, rub it in my face. I don't know why you inviting me.
Yeah.
He said, Billy, I played the entire second half of the season with every knuckle on my hands broken. He said, but I taped them up and I kept playing. He said, because you would go every day of practice, you were bleeding from somewhere. He said, you'd go have surgery, but you'd come right back to summer camp with stitches and staples, and you would just cover them up. He said, there's no way I could set out a game. And this guy had 10 times the talent in one finger than I had in my whole body. But I never knew he was watching me, and that made him get to where he wanted to go in life. So you always have an impact whether you know it or not.
Talk a little bit about transitioning into motivational speaker and how you met Tony Robbins and that story.
You know, I decided I was reading. Some of you didn't remember newspapers, so I was reading a newspaper one day because I was working a job making $6.50 an hour. I was making good money because I lived at home with Mama. But when I decided I wanted to get in a relationship, I had to make more money. So I decided I wanted to get into real estate. Got into real estate, had some success in real estate. But then the world has a way of sometimes taking care of you when you get too big for your britches, as my mama said it growing up. So Hurricane Katrina hits, wipes out everything we got. I had 40 rental houses, 10 of them washed away, gone. Well, the problem is I didn't have them insured like I should have. Because, you know, sometimes you'll get insurance and you'll just put enough on it to cover my mortgage,
Right.
or maybe just enough of the value because I don't want to pay the premium.
Sure.
Every real estate investor ever.
Yeah.
Well, the problem was I still owed money to the bank.
Yeah.
So you know you've hit rock bottom when you go from living in a house on the hill in Saraland on 3 acres to the mother-in-law. Can I move in? And I got a kid in diapers. I can't even afford to
Right.
put diapers on. If you want to get motivated, guys that are listening, move in with your mother-in-law. You will work 24. Now, I love her. So if you're listening, Mama Joyce, I love you. Great woman. But it was
You work
embarrassing.
just to get out of the house.
It was embarrassing
Yeah.
to face her as a man that, hey, I can't take care of your daughter who I promised I would.
Right.
And also, so I hit rock bottom. Started hanging out with the wrong people. You're thinking, oh, I can change my state with a cylinder of a can of beer. And so one night I come home. We had rented a little place over here on Dolphin Street. So I come in and I get attacked about halfway down the hallway. So I'm thinking, you know, Mobile, I'm getting mugged. So I'm yelling for my wife. We had the young son at home. I get to the light switch. I flip it on. It's my wife. She's got a broomstick beating the fire out of me. And she said, I'm going to beat you till you start acting like the person that I married. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And this was my wife who was sweet, kind, church going. She had had enough. But then I said, okay, so I was talking to a guy the next day, said, I got to change my life. He said, you need to go see this guy down in Florida. I said, who? He said, Tony Robbins. I didn't know who Tony Robbins was.
Right.
Other than he made the movie Shallow Hal, which my wife despises, that I think is the funniest movie ever put out. We'll still differ to the day I die on that. So I said, well, I don't have the money. He said, well, I'll give you a ticket. You just got to get yourself down there. So I load up. I go down. I got a little bag. I got crackers. I'm going to sleep in my car. So I get there, and I'm standing there, and just my heart, I see these people. There was a guy that had been burned. There was people in wheelchairs, and just my heart is to help people. So I go over, and, hey, you need some water? Hey, you need a chair? Because so many of just normal people just walk by them and don't even pay them. Well, they're people, too. So a lady comes by that works for Tony and says, hey, you're doing such a great job with them. Would you mind sitting with them? And by the way, here's a radio. If they need anything, call me. She don't know me from anybody. But this is all destiny lining up. She said, hey, we're going to let you guys in 10 minutes early. You go get them situated. We got a seating area for them. So I get them in, get them seated and everything. She said, hey, you can come sit up front. So they put me on the front row. I'm so broke I can't pay attention, but I'm there. So a guy sitting next to me got a T-shirt on. He's got some ripped up jeans, and another guy sitting on the left. And, I'm just conversating. Hey, what do you do? And one guy said, oh, I created this little company. I said, oh, okay. Tap Out brand. You ever heard of Tap Out, UFC?
Yeah.
He's the founder of it. A guy over here next to me, he said, yeah, we found a little company called Google. You may have heard of that. So here I'm sitting next to these multi-millionaires that are part of Tony's inner circle. And then I meet a guy that created a shoe company out in Vegas, that I'd never heard of. Text my wife. She knew exactly because she buys shoes from there. But it's just you start meeting these people that you realize are just like you. So we get there, and I heard everything from the Bible Belt. Oh, don't go to these seminars. It's a cult. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Nobody told me that you had to walk on fire barefoot. Now, as I told you when we started, I got some beautiful feet.
Right.
So I don't want to walk on fire. So he said, everybody take your shoes off. And I said, wait a minute. I didn't know about this. He said, oh, everybody's going to be fine. So we go outside. Literally, you see this glow of fire at a distant smoke. There's drums playing. I'm thinking, it's a cult. We're going to be sacrificed. So I'm halfway there, and there's this girl in a wheelchair. She's stuck in a gravel parking lot. They can't get her. So I just grab it, and I just start pushing her. We get about halfway there, and she says, stop, stop. So I stop. She looks at me. She gets up and just starts walking. I'm thinking she's healed. And I said, well, didn't you need a wheelchair? She said, oh, I was just feeling sorry. My back was sore. And young girl in her 20s. She said, I saw you and realized that I didn't have no excuse. So well, that's pretty cool. So we get there. There's like 20 lanes. So I'm in a lane. then they moved me to like 5 different lanes. So I'm thinking this is God saying, get your shoes on, get back home, right? It was all destiny. I ended up in Tony's lane, which you're only in Tony Robbins' lane if you're Oprah, Usher.
Yeah.
You know, some big, or you paying $10,000 to be at his event.
Right.
I'm there on a free $200 ticket. So I get there and they say, make you move. And I get about halfway across this fire. And I see this angelic blonde calling my name. So I'm thinking, here, Scott, I've burned to death. But God is such a wonderful God. He sent the prettiest angel in heaven. So what do you think I did? I went to her. Didn't realize it was Tony's wife.
Yeah.
She's like, hey, come over here. So I got to go backstage, meet with him. And he wanted to hear my story. And he said, hey, I want you to write a book. I was the worst speller in high school. You know, my English teacher made fun of my test grade all the time. That's back in the day where they would read you test scores out and traumatize you. Billy Brown made a 30. Well, it wasn't a 0. At least I made a 30.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I don't know how. He said, well, I'll put you in touch with the right people. He said, oh, by the way, I want you to speak in Arizona in 3 months. I've never spoken, shared my testimony with anybody. So I had this old crap moment. I'm like, I'm not sure about that. And I said, Tony, I don't have any money. He said, well, here's what I'm going to do. You're going to stay in the hotel with these guys tonight that was in his inner circle.
Yep.
So I got to stay in the hotel for free. They were feeding me, you know, just putting the right people in my life that need to be there. And he said, I'm going to fly you to Vegas on my dime, pay for you to go through this 4-day speakers boot camp. So I fly out there, nervous as a house cat. Wife's back home, hoping they don't cut my power off before I get back. I mean, that's how bad it was. My wife calls me and said, hey, guess what came in the mail? I said, what? She said, we got a check from the government because I've been paying them for years. I never got nothing back.
Right.
You got a $5,000 check. I said, well, just make sure you go in a hurry to the bank.
Yep.
Cash it before they change their mind.
Right, before they change their mind. I realized they sent it to the wrong person. But that gave us breathing room. And I said, so I'm sitting there next to a girl who was a blogger at the time. This was pre-podcast. So very introverted. Could not carry on a conversation.
And what year was this?
This was back in 2006, 7.
Okay. Yep.
But she blogged for a living on an iPad. iPads that just came out.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what it was. I'm like, what is that? She's like, it's an iPad. But she couldn't carry on a personal conversation, but she was making $100,000 a month blogging about restaurants and hotels. And she gets invited to Egypt to ride camels to a party of 50. I mean, now she, multi-millionaire from it. And then the next guy next to me made some kind of semiconductor that I don't even understand, made $1 billion.
Right.
So I started meeting. You ever heard of a software called Dragon Speaking Software?
I haven't. No.
Ladies, so it's like if I sit here now, of course, with AI, it's easy, but you would speak and it would write your book for you, which is what I use to write my book.
Right.
So it's like a dictation software.
Right.
Yeah.
She invented that software. So here I am sitting next to her. So they said, all right, publish your book. So, I'm sitting there trying to figure it out. And I found a girl on some online site that for $150, proofread it.
Right.
She thought your grammar's horrible. I said, oh, I know it is. I warned you about that. So I get the book published the night before I go because he said, if you don't publish it, you can't go on stage. So I get to his security guy who had been his security guy. And I said, hey, I'm here, I published my book. He said, oh, great. Hands me an American Express heavy card, not just a plastic, like titanium. I want to buy 1,000 books. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, for my foundation. I'm thinking, you're just a security guy. I'm thinking it's a joke. He's like, oh, no. Well, come to find out, he's from North Carolina, and he's the nation's largest steel producer. He bought a company. The economy collapsed when the dot-com bubble popped. Well, he was losing everything. He was sitting at a bar next to a girl. She said, oh, my cousin's the something minister in China of their steel imports. So he got a direct contract with China for steel. Now has his own plane. He volunteers for Tony as security just to have something to do. Bought 1,000 books at $6 a pop. That'd pay for a few power bills.
Absolutely.
So I go on stage. Nobody told me it was going to be 10,000 people. So imagine you've never been on stage. You walk out, it's 10,000 people being broadcast in 28 different languages. I kind of had a little butt pucker moment, but it was just
pictured
like,
everybody naked.
right.
Yeah.
But it was like I was destined to be there. But to see, even with publishing the book, and my biggest accolade was it going bestseller in India because I quoted Gandhi in it, and they loved it. But it's just to get messages from people from Dubai or Kuwait or all over the world, Australia. Just, hey, your book changed my life. And I had a pastor tell me, because sometimes religious people can get down a rabbit hole. Well, if it's not the Bible, I've got like 100 scriptures in that book that a lot of people read that would never open a Bible. Maybe they're a different religion. Maybe they're Hindu, Muslim, whatever, but they've read my book.
Sure.
I've planted that seed. So I had a pastor tell me one time, oh, you need to repent of your book and this, that, and it. So I just kind of one ear and out the other. I've been judged my whole life. Because when you judge me, you better watch out. Because tell me I can't, then I'm going to take pictures to show you. But it was funny when he wrote a book and tried to sell me a copy. No, I'm good.
Yeah.
But that's the world we live in. When you, just like insurance, you do stuff and people judge you, but then they want to be your competition.
Well, it's funny not to start talking about theology, but I saw a video on TikTok a couple months ago. Like Jelly Roll came out of nowhere, right? And it was a pastor, basically saying that Jelly Roll is blasphemous for
Right.
some of whatever. And I'm like, well, if he was a pastor, maybe, but like if that's an individual that is trying to inspire people and bring them closer to God and that sort of thing, and he's maybe a little bit wrong, like.
But the 80% of the right outweighs the wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. You're right.
So I had I was at church one time. This was a couple years ago, and a younger pastor that was probably in his mid to late 30s pulled me aside and he's like, "Can I ask you a question?" I was like, "Sure." He said, "How do you know Gary Vaynerchuk?" And this was right after we did the podcast with him. I was like, "Well," I kind of told him. He's like, "Dude," he's like, minus all the F-bombs, he's like, about 90% of what he talks about is straight out of the Bible.
That's right.
He just doesn't know it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, and I've always said if I haven't had a chance to tell Gary that,
Yeah.
I've always said next time I talk to him, I'm going to,
That's
hey,
awesome.
because I think he would think that's really cool.
Yeah.
But there's ways to, you're preaching without knowing it.
That's right. Well, Tony Robbins talks about that, and Zig Ziglar, he learned that from Zig and Jim Rohn. They'll tell you, hey, 80% of what I'm going to talk about, you can find in the Bible. It's just we're putting it to everyday practice for
Correct.
business people. And that's what, with, the Tony environment like that, you meet people of different religions, different backgrounds. You learn to appreciate them where they're at and where they're going, because I have what I thought was a dear friend quit talking to me because I followed, Grant Cardone on his stuff. So it's just, I said, but I take the meat and I throw the bones out. Sure. I don't listen to other stuff. I'm not interested in following down his rabbit hole. Yeah. But I take the meat that I need, just like I do from, if I watch T.D. Jakes over here, I watch Tony Robbins, whoever. And I remember back, and it's like building your business, you get what you focus on. Mm-hmm. And I'm big on that. When I wake up in the morning, what I'm listening to, when I'm getting ready, I've got 10 minutes of an audio playing. I'm journaling by my bed. I've got my goals written down, because here's what happened to me. I knew one thing from Katrina. See, we all have tragedies in our life. It can either derail you or propel you. So I look back to when that happened, what could I have done different? So when Sally hit, I was kind of all over the place. I was doing benefits. I was, teaching at school, coaching ball, but not making a lot of money, not being able to take care of priorities that I wanted, and not being fulfilled as a person. Because here's my biggest thing. It's not about, what I drive, where I live. If the school calls, say, hey, we need a $500 check for this soccer team or wrestling team, for me to be able to do that, or if somebody needs a power bill paid, that means the world to me. So when Sally hit, we had just finished paying off a large debt to the IRS, large debt, over 80 grand. Me and a business partner, when it hit, I said, give it to me, I'll pay it. I should have been more diligent. So we paid it. And We were sitting there with $5,000 in the bank. Sally hits. Told my wife, "You talking about faith of a mustard seed?" I said, "I'm gonna go to Lowe's and buy $5,000 worth of lumber." She's like, "You're what?" So I dropped $5,000 worth of lumber in my driveway. I said, "God told me at our little church service to open my construction company back up, because that's what I used to do." She's like, "You're crazy." I said, "Well, probably so, but I'm gonna do it." So I did it. Didn't know what we was gonna do with the lumber. Me and my son, he was 14 at the time, started cleaning yards, cutting trees off houses, just making a little money. Because we didn't have power for 8 days, so I mean, we weren't gonna sit at the house. It was hot. So I taught him how to get out and work, which made him go to college, because he's like, "I don't want to do this crap. I'm gonna go." So he's focused on getting his law degree. But he appreciates the blue collar work, the satisfaction. He just doesn't want to do it for a living, which I get. But so we start building, and we started people, "Hey, can you repair my fence?" "Yeah, I can repair it." Then, "Hey, can you build my?" So I get a call from a lady at church. She says, "Hey, can you come over and look at my fence?" "Sure." And it's all about believing in yourself. So you got to see the vision before it happens, and you got to be able to sell that vision to other people. So if you got a team, your job is to sell that vision to get them to where you want them to go to, because they don't see it. That's your vision.
Right.
See, a lot of people, you don't understand? No, they don't. But if you keep painting that picture, just like if you tell your kids about Disney, you tell them about Mickey Mouse enough, they're going to be ready to go to Disney. So I get there, and this lady said, "Oh, by the way, my other 5 neighbors want their yards done." It's an $80,000 job. I have no workers. She said, "Can you do this?" "I sure can." Sign a contract, $80,000, 50% deposit. I get home, the wife said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I got to get online. I got to find some workers." I didn't even know how to build a fence, but I knew I had faith in me to find somebody. So I go on Facebook. "Anybody know how to build a fence?" A guy from Pensacola calls. Great guy. He immigrated here. His parents actually immigrated from Cuba many, many years ago. He said, "I got workers, great guys. Them guys worked for me for 3 years building fences."
Abadang.
We went from Sally, $5,000 investment, in 3.5 months, did well into 6 figures in 3.5 months from
That's
nothing.
outstanding.
Just having that vision and saying, "You know what, I'm not going to give up."
Hey, I had a question for you. Way back when we started this podcast, you're talking about, because you and I grew up exact same time, 70s and 80s, kids mean to you at school, saying stuff, lady in the grocery store. Fast forward to today, 2025. Do people, when they, do you ever get any of that anymore? Or is it today more normal, I guess normalized in terms of you just don't hear things from people like that. You're older, people here know you, know who you are. Do you get as much of that anymore?
Not as much. It is a different time we live in where people with disabilities more in the forefront. You've got a ton of people on TikTok, social media influencers that are in wheelchairs. Before you were kind of kept out of the limelight.
Right.
Whereas when I grew up, everybody was in this, unless you were truly like incapacitated and couldn't do nothing, then you were in a regular classroom.
Sure.
There's no such thing as special ed when I grew up.
You also know a lot of people, too.
I know a couple people, yes.
So
my workers get a kick.
A lot of people.
Yeah, no
you
doubt.
Probably
I figured
you
that.
probably don't go anywhere that you don't see a few people you know.
No, Mobile and Baldwin County, if I go anywhere, I can go in every Lowe's and Home Depot, and somebody, whether not even the employees, but a customer is going to know me. People I hadn't seen, but my kids get there like, "Yeah, somebody else and I do, and that's really helped the growth of the business. We're 100% referral based. I don't advertise at all,
right?
And we do mid-6s every year, and growing, and it's all referral based, and that's from what I learned from a sidekick over here, Bradley, on social media. Pushing, I post pictures.
Sure.
I show people, and people, "Hey, can I get one of those? Hey, now we're fixing to build a $500,000 house from a guy." And it was just he saw we did a concrete slab. He was in a bind.
Right.
"Hey, can you come do this? I know it's raining." We went and did it anyway because they were getting married under his pole barn. Now we're building him a $500,000 house.
You know one of your pieces of content that I remember? I always tell people, share the warts. Share the when you swallowed that screw.
Yes.
You didn't even know I remembered that.
No.
I saw that.
Had it in
He
your
swallowed
mouth and you swallowed it somehow.
Well, I did have it in my mouth. So, sometimes we do good deeds for people
Right.
and it bites you in the butt.
Yeah.
That's why you don't do anything for free. So I'm under a desk. So I got this investor. Hey, man, he was trying to put a desk together, and I knew he wasn't going to be able to put it. He's got a lot of smarts, a lot of money, but he cannot put nothing together. When I pulled up and I saw the brand new tool set he bought, I'm like, yeah, he ain't going to put this
Yeah,
desk together.
right.
And it was like a 3-legged, real fancy, old school, like from the 70s desk. I put it together. He decides he wants to move it. We move it. I said, well, let me get on here and make sure everything. So I lay under it with my mouth open. That screw goes right down my mouth.
Oh my God.
I gotta ask, hospital visit or did it pass through?
It gets better. So I'm immediately choking. I get out from under the
Damn.
desk. He does the Heimlich on me, so it frees up, but it's still not out. So I go to
Right.
go in the bathroom. He didn't tell me he had an attack cat in his bathroom.
Oh no!
That cat, Chuck Norris, kicked me when I went
bet.
through that door. It's screaming. I'm screaming. I'm
Yeah.
trying to get it out of me because I know it's not good.
Right.
But I can feel it. Go to the hospital. Yeah, we got to scope you. He finally get me to sleep. They scope. It's done moved on. So they said, well, what we're going to do, we're going to x-ray you in about a week. So it took about 2.5 weeks, lots of bananas.
I bet.
And finally it got out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
it was about 1.5 inch
That's gotta
long
be
wood screw.
painful.
I never knew once it because
Yeah. Once it came out,
I have a
you-
cousin that called me. She works in the GI department. She said, "Don't listen to these people on the internet." She said, "Eat lots of bananas. You want it to be solidified,
I try to eat a banana every morning
right, and get it out of you."
just to make myself regular kind of thing.
That's a good lesson to the listeners that, when you're sharing content about your business, share the screw ups.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Because that's the one thing I remember.
Right.
It's like the people want you to be humanized.
Yeah, my last two of my last 3 customers have mentioned that. Hey, how'd that screw taste? But they saw it
I
online.
have an important question. Did you keep the screw?
I don't know whatever. I mean, it's
he
down
didn't
the
dig
drain
through.
somewhere.
He didn't dig through it to find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't get a magnet or anything,
Yeah.
so,
So-
I didn't want it.
Billy, I was telling my wife, I guess it's a couple months ago. I'm a DIY home improvement guy. I have, I built a tractor shed for our John Deere, and I can build an awning, and I can build decks, and I can build fences. Now I'm slow because I'm getting old, but I can use a saw and I can do some stuff. But I'm not. If you said, "Hey Scott, can you build an addition on my house?" No, I can't, and I don't work with concrete. And let me tell you something I don't do, never do. And if you're listening to this, don't ever, if you don't know what you're doing, and I don't, mess with electricity. That's a damn good way.
See, that's the one thing I know
get-
how to do.
Well, yeah, because your dad's an electrician
Yeah.
and you work with him. But I do not touch if it's something electrical, I'm calling an electrician. First of all, I'll burn my damn house down. Second of all, I just don't want to.
Yeah.
Electricity, man, it's a touch and go kind of thing. But
Just get shocked a couple times.
was telling-
stop being scared of it.
well, I was telling my wife a couple months ago. I said, "Let me tell you something. If I ever do decide to get out of insurance and become a contractor, if you'll just call or text people back, show up when you say you're going to show up, and do good work for people, and yes ma'am, no ma'am, and treat just human decency.
Yeah.
You have as much damn work as you want in the contractor business.
That's one. My brother-in-law is a real successful landscaper, and I think that's one of the biggest factors is he runs it like a business. It's not a guy with a mower.
Right.
There's proposals and payment portals, and here's the schedule, and he has a program he uses. He can look at, and it tells him exactly where each truck is at each moment, how much time. Running it like a business versus just a guy with a truck.
Yeah.
Bradley, I
would
can't tell you how many contractors
I know.
we've called to come out and do work at my house. Just don't show up. Don't call. Don't text.
So
don't.
I had that happen. So I had a handyman that I used. He actually built this outer wall out here.
Yeah.
And we've got a couple rental properties now. And I need to have a handyman on the
Right.
You know, obviously, and I know you're doing that now. But like, hey, I need this thing done or whatever. And this dude was coming to the house we moved out. We built a house. The house we moved out of, we're now renting it, and I needed some stuff, TLC stuff done. And he texted me, all right, I'm on my way. I'll be there at 12:30. Never saw him. Never saw him again. I'm like, I think he got killed on the way there. Like, you know, but I had this, I don't know if you noticed, but this wall right here on the other side of this, I had sheetrock put up on there.
Okay.
And the guy came by 2 weeks ago, and I said, I have one rule: no sheetrock dust. Whatever you can do to mitigate it, mitigate it.
Which is kind of hard to do.
Yeah, but
Unless
try.
you got the vacuum.
Right, at least make an effort.
I hate sheetrock dust. And I get to my office a week ago, and there was sheetrock dust everywhere.
About an inch thick on everything. you had.
Everywhere. And it was, you can tell the difference between trying to mitigate it and
Yeah.
Just don't care.
and what ended up happening was they have this like dome thing they put over. It's like plastic, and there was a hole in it. He's like, yeah, we saw the hole. I'm like, well, you going to clean it up? Like,
Yeah.
And you tell you how good of a guy I am. The job costs $1,000. He was like, well, I'll discount your job $200. I was like, brother, that's your profit. Like, I want you to make money. I was like, just give me a real good price on the next thing I get
Yeah,
you to do.
right.
But you're absolutely right. Just being
You don't even have to do great
professional
work
and-
if you just show
Right,
up,
yeah.
be halfway, nice to people, and you don't even have to do great work. Just do decent work, but spend 2 seconds to say, "Hey, I'm running 30 minutes behind. But I'll be there at 1 o'clock." But hell, they won't even. They just don't show up.
Right.
Yeah.
And then 4 months later, they'll call you or text you and be like, "Hey, I'm ready to do that job now." It's crazy.
Yeah, it happens, and that's probably one of the biggest feedbacks we got, that you're one of the only guys that ever show up, or even worse, one of the only one to give us a quote. The rest of them never get back with a quote, and never follow, or they do show up, and then like I said, they'll show up at 12 o'clock,
Yeah.
work for an hour, and then leave because they're balancing 4 or 5 jobs,
Right.
And I have one philosophy of this. I'm gonna treat them how I want to be treated.
Sure.
And that's key. And there are times emergencies come. I have to say, hey, I'm going to have to take crew A over here, but I communicate that.
Yeah, just
and I've
te-
never
just
had an
text me.
issue.
Just
Never
say-
had an issue.
Just say, "Hey, something's come up. It's taking longer, but we'll be over at 3:30, or I'll be over tomorrow morning if that's okay. If not, tell me when no problem." But these people, I've never seen anything like it. And I told her, I said, "I tell you, if you really want to make Oprah Winfrey money, let me get into the damn HVAC business,
Yeah.
and hire some guys and train them to like put the little blue booties on because when you're in HVAC business, you have to go in people's houses." You at the door, you put the little booties on your feet. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Somebody. Hell, you'd have so much work you wouldn't. You'd have to turn people away.
It makes a difference. When people don't realize something that's, what I'm proud of when I go into Lowe's or Home Depot, especially over on the Eastern Shore, the people that work there, they call me to do their work. When they got somebody really don't know who to use, they give them. And even other contractors that are in a bind and maybe they can't figure it out.
Yep.
Today
Sub
I was
you out.
checking out before I came over here, and a guy standing behind me. I'm like, why is this guy standing behind me? Sometimes you get a little nervous there.
Sure.
And he's like, hey, they told me I was dealing with, I can't figure out how to square this French door in. And they said, you'd be the guy to talk to. I'm like, yeah, we'll swing by and knock it out for you. So when you get that reputation, then you never have to look for work.
I'll tell you this.
You need to close this out when you get a chance.
Sure. Yeah. If I'm you, that would be my biggest sales point. When I met with somebody, I'd be like, "Well, I'll tell you what. That Lowe's down here off of such and such street, and the Home Depot down here. I'm the guy they get to do their work." Because to me, I'd be like, "Oh well, yeah. I mean, I'd use that guy." Fantastic story, man. I'm so proud to have you on the show today.
Enjoyed it.
Been
Thank you
through a
very much.
lot.
Been through a lot, but it's been a journey, And I tell people, if I had a choice, and I've been asked this,
Sure.
if you could go back to the age of 2 and redo it,
Wave a magic wand, that never happened.
I'd climb back in the car and go through it all
I'll be
because
damned.
of the lives that have been impacted.
Sure.
And the impact, when a grown man comes up and hugs you that you coached when he was 12 years old,
Absolutely.
that had no shoes, no football equipment, bad home life, had no daddy. Because, see, my dad left me in a burn unit, never came back.
Damn.
But down the road, I got to baptize him before he died.
Yeah. Y'all had a relationship
we finally
towards
did.
the end.
Towards the end, but I was man enough to go and bridge that gap. But that kid that was on that bicycle that had no shoes, that now he has a job at Airbus making 6 figures, because I was willing to say, hey, come over here, we'll get you some gear. Come play football. The first person to ever believe in him, I'd go through it all again.
You know what I find to be odd, Billy? Been thinking a lot about this. You don't ever listen to your damn parents. Just like employees don't ever listen to anything you say. But in your life, and I say yours, meaning everybody listening to this right now, you'll hear something from a stranger. And it won't be some crazy. It'll be something to inspire you or to put something in your head. You'll hear this person will say something to you, total stranger, and it can change the whole course of your life.
That's right.
I remember, this is a true story. I was at the rec center in Hamilton, Alabama. I was probably a 9th grader, and we were playing pickup basketball one day. And Hamilton has big work release. And some of those guys, they get finished on work release. 100% this guy was on work release. African-American guy playing basketball with us. And he looked at me in the middle of that game. He said, one day you're going to play college basketball. I was a 9th grader. I had never thought about playing college basketball. But it was almost like him saying that to me, total stranger, put that bug in my head.
Right.
4 years later, I'm playing college basketball.
Wow.
And I find it odd that throughout people's lives, this total stranger, in your case, so many people, you've touched their life, can say that one sentence or that one phrase or that one thing, and it's like it flips a switch on or puts a bug in your head, and the next thing you know, you're living that. I got to tell this story, and I'm going to let everybody go. This is a true story. I cannot remember where I saw this. There was a young man up in the Northeast that was going to high school. He was a junior. He made terrible grades. His teacher's all failure. He's going to flunk out of school, probably be in prison one day. His mother stayed on his ass about going to school, and she wanted him to take the ACT. Okay? He was like, I make D's and F's in school. I'm not going to college. But mom's on my ass. I'm going to go Saturday. I'm going to sit down. I haven't studied one lick for the ACT, and I'm going to go take it. Have you heard this story? This is a true story. He goes to the local community college. This was back in the mid-'80s, mid to late 80s. He takes the ACT. Now, he's probably like me. He didn't study for it. He didn't make good grades, so there's 0 chance he's going to do very well on it. But he's like a junior in high school. 2 weeks later, the mail runs, and he gets in the mail an envelope, and it's his ACT test results. Some bitch makes a 34 on the ACT. And he can't believe it. It might have been a 36. It was some unbelievable ACT score. He goes to school. He takes this letter. He shows it to all of his teachers. His teachers start treating him differently. He, in his mind, is like, I'm a hell of a lot smarter than I thought I was. Then the snowball effect happens. The teachers start treating him differently. He starts believing in himself because he just made a 34 or 36 on the ACT. He starts making fantastic grades. He starts trying. He gets into like a local community college, knocks the bottom out of it, ends up going to law school at like Princeton or Harvard, turns into an entrepreneur, founds these businesses, entrepreneurial spirit, ends up making hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Obviously, his mother's just blown away by all this, but it turns his whole life around. Fast forward 14 years later, he goes home for Christmas, to his mother's house. She still lived in the same house that she lived in when he was growing up. And he walks in the door, and on the kitchen counter is a letter to him that has not been opened. And on the front of it, it's from the people that do the ACT. This is 14 years later. He opens the letter, and the letter says, "Dear Mr. So-and-so, we're writing to inform you that 14 years ago on September the 8th, 1987, you took the ACT test. We, through some type of audit that we've done over the past years, found out that you were one of 5 people in the United States that we gave the wrong ACT score to, and you really made like a 14 on it."
Wow.
So somebody out there made a really good grade and they thought they made a bad grade.
Right.
Yeah.
Which they probably took it again and made a great grade. But you talk about turning somebody's life around. He went from destined to probably a life of crime or going to jail or just not being very successful. And then by taking that test, turned it all around.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Guys, you're listening to the Insurance Guys podcast. And as I end every episode, rewards come from action, not discussion. Get your ass out from behind that desk today. Go out into the big bad world. Make money for your family, for your wife, for your husband, for your kids' college fund, for your parents and your in-laws that are struggling out there like mine. Go make money for them. I'm going to get Rand to bed and let him go to sleep. He needs to go snappy time. It's lunch nappy time. Go make money for them. Write good business for the agencies that you represent, and write good business for the carriers that you represent. Bradley Flowers, I love you.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Billy.
Billy, we love you
Appreciate
too.
it. Love.
Guys, you're listening to the Insurance Guys podcast, and we love each one of you. Thank you so much for being a part of our family, and we'll see you back here real soon. Take care.